Hello, hello, one, two, three. All right, everything looks good. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we are talking about Elvis, the new Baz Luhrmann movie, which I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on Baz Luhrmann. Growing up, the only real movie that I ever saw that was Baz Luhrmann was Moulin Rouge. It was a long time before I saw just anything else. Australia, Romeo and Juliet. And it was actually because of Great Gatsby. I think Great Gatsby came out in like 2014. So I would have been 18 then. And at that point, I guess I just never watched Baz Luhrmann stuff. So I went back and watched all those, and it was like, this is underwhelming, like very underwhelming. Australia was underwhelming. Great Gatsby was very underwhelming. Even Romeo and Juliet, I just didn't get it. Like I got why it seemed like people liked it, but I didn't get why it became like a cultural phenomenon. Um and but then looking back at Moulin Rouge always seemed to work. And I'll get into more why I think that is later. But Baz Luhrmann is someone who makes movies very infrequently, and he does have a style, which again we'll get into here eventually. But it's so he's definitely, I would say, an artist, but it's odd because there's a weird type of corporate feeling to a lot of the stuff that he does. And so I was worried going into Elvis. Primarily because you have that huge amount of flashiness that I think usually crowds his work and makes it kind of unbearable sometimes. Um, and also because whenever you saw the trailers, which I thought some of them were well done, there were lots of problems that seemed annoying, like Tom Hanks and his makeup seemed annoying. But more than anything, the fact that the quotes that were on the movie were from Liz and Priscilla Presley, pretty much giving so much praise to the movie. And I was worried about that because I think there's a way of looking at these types of movies, these types of biopics, where you can have something that gives you an impression of what that person's life was, and do it in a way that puts the story at the very forefront. Or you can create this type of hagiography, like I would say the Doors did, or the type of thing that what like Bohemian Rhapsody did with Freddie Mercury. And the movie just kind of gets lost in the persona, and it becomes such as big. So seeing that Liz and Priscilla Presley were like, this is the man, this is who he was. They get it perfectly, and you can see that Austin Butler is putting 100% into the performance, and you can see that Tom Hanks is putting 100% into whatever the hell he's doing. It made me feel like, okay, are we gonna? I was nervous, obviously, because of the runtime, and then because I was worried that it was going to end up being this very over bloated sense of just fawning over Elvis and trying to get the detail like perfect while kind of ignoring telling a good and entertaining story, and then it was just going to get away with them. Going to see it, I will say it was a mixed bag. There are some very, very good moments, and I think there are more very, very poor moments. So I think I'll just kind of go through the good and the bad of each side, and then kind of that should probably give a good impression. So first of all, I will say I think the thing that Baz Luhrmann has done, the best thing he's done, is Moulin Rouge. And I think it is kind of because his sensibility of going over the top all the time with everything, I think worked very well with Moulin Rouge's kind of arch aesthetic, with kind of feeling like the entire thing is a stage. The entire screen, I think it even opens with a stage. You kind of get a close up on that. The curtains open. You're like and it kind of fits because the whole world there takes place in a theater. I think that I think that his style kind of lent itself to that, and even the romanticism of the early 1900s in France. I just feel like the style and the setting both kind of mesh together, whereas I feel like he's always trying to cram that style into everything else that he does. And it doesn't really fit. I think that there are moments. Obviously, we're talking about a performer, an entertainer. We're talking about Elvis, larger than life figure, known for his persona on the stage. So I think that there are times where, again, this kind of lends itself to that. Baz Luhrmann does a lot of stuff with opera. You kind of feel that as well. And I think that does, in a lot of ways, kind of fit here. On the good side, I'll say, first of all, I'm going to focus on the story here, first of all. I think that there is a fantastic story in Elvis that this movie does definitely hit on. And it reaches certain, well, I'll say the story of Elvis, I think, reaches certain almost like mythic Greek heights in terms of the way that the movie is exploring what does Elvis mean in terms of being a pillar of the culture, but also just being a regular old entertainer. And at what point do you have Elvis Presley, the man on stage, or do you have Elvis Presley just someone trying to be who they are? Do they even know who they are anymore? And the movie makes a decision to tell the story through Tom Hanks's character, who is Colonel Parker. And Colonel Parker was essentially his manager. And I think that the movie, in terms of what direction are we approaching this character from, does a very good job in going from that direction. I thought that was very good. I think that I was surprised that the story brought a fresh perspective in that way, and that the story kind of went all in. It kind of went over the top with it in that way. But I will say, the beginning of this movie, the first 20 minutes of this movie, do not fit. I'll say even the first half hour do not work. They are a total mess. I think that Baz Luhrmann kind of goes for this frenetic, just constantly cutting, constantly throwing things, constantly going from one time period to another time period to another to another to another. It's kind of supposed to be charming, getting a lot of information in at the beginning, and it really isn't. It feels like very, very bad filmmaking. I don't think that it works. You can feel that it's very proud of itself, but it is a huge headache. Again, Moulin Rouge did the same thing, and I think it does a good job with doing it in that setting. But this feels a lot more like the opening of Bohemian Rhapsody, the first like 45 minutes of Bohemian Rhapsody, where it's like, just choose what you want the story to be and tell that. You don't have to cram everything in here. You'll do your director's cut. It'll go on HBO Max. Just right now, just choose what you want to do. So in general, yeah, from the story, there's the perspective in general of how are we approaching each and every part of his life, doing it from the Colonel's perspective. I liked that. But in terms of the editing, especially at the beginning, it was very weak. Even throughout, the editing is very confusing. There's a part, and I'm not giving anything away here. There's a part where it kind of is doing a TV special of Elvis, and it's essentially Elvis is wanting to do his own thing. The Tom Hanks character, his producer, is trying to do his own thing. And at one point, Tom Hanks's character has to just leave. He's kind of like, he's confused why he's not having any control. So he leaves the room. At that moment, a huge historical event happens. Elvis hears about it. The crew hears about it. The Colonel is not in the room, not in the studio. So everyone leaves, and they're watching television to go and kind of see what's going on. Everyone's situated. They've been watching TV for what seems like a good few minutes. And then Tom Hanks kind of bursts into the room with a speech ready to kind of say, and the way that the location of the way that it's edited, and it loses the location of Tom Hanks's character. It feels overly fussy, and there are a lot of instances like that where you just kind of lose the location of certain characters throughout the movie because it's being overly fussy. I mean, those are some problems with it. On the good side, Rob Moto, actually, okay, a comment here. I appreciated the overload of style versus not having any style at all. This is much better than Bohemian Rhapsody. I mean, Bohemian Rhapsody was atrocious. I agree with you there. I think it was the moment that I've been losing sympathy with the Oscars for a while, but the moment that kind of did it all in for me was whenever Bohemian Rhapsody got nominated for Best Editing. At that point, it was like, this is actually a full-on joke, and they don't give a shit. So I definitely agree it's better than that. And I even think that there are times, I even agree a bit with the style. I think there are times, particularly in the later end, there's obviously a whole part that takes place in Vegas. I think the time where Elvis is starting to get into the later years, the darker years, I think the style works very, very well in that area. So I really like that. And I mean, yes, as well. I would definitely like to watch something that is trying to do something and going way too far over the top than something that just plays it so by the numbers. Especially, yeah, biopics normally just do by the numbers, and they're forgettable, and it just feels like TV. But on the good side, with the style, I think the acting is very laudable. I think Austin Butler, which I don't think other than Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, not even recognize him from that. I just saw in trivia on IMDb that that was him in that movie on Spawn Ranch. He does a great job. There are moments he does a great job with the impersonations, and a lot of the best things about the movie is doing the recreation of musical events. Austin Butler does a very good job there. Tom Hanks, I think, submits a interesting performance. Normally, he's the everyman. He's the guy that you're supposed to relate to the most. Here, he's taken on a darker role, but and the parts where he's there doing that is interesting. But that makeup is so bad, and it feels kind of like a personification of what I think is wrong with when the movie goes wrong, which is Tom Hanks is there in a good character. I think a strong character. I think he does a good job with it, but the packaging that comes with it gets it, I think, to like the 50% or 75% mark. And the part that isn't working, it's just because it's too damn flashy. It's too like, okay, he looks like a toad. He looks like he's out of Dune, like that the Stellan Skarsgård character out of Dune. It's just a bit like rein it in slightly because you're distracting me, and the distraction is keeping me from going like all the way with this movie. But still, the performances, he does a good job with that. I just think that in general, you get a lot of just over bloatedness with the movie. And I do get that there are a lot of people that are saying it's supposed to be that. Like this is a movie about Elvis. The man died before he could even reach his mid 40s because his life was nothing but indulgence. Like it's supposed to be like there's a side of Elvis that is dark and weird and gross and over the top. I mean, the man like almost single-handedly with his performance kind of defined Vegas. So why is the movie not going to be over the top and big? And I do get that. I do understand that. I just think that I think that I think the level of style, the level of overdoneness that the style is, does not match the kind of if trying to say this right. If the style eventually matched the grotesqueness and the darkness that you get of Elvis in the later years, then I think I would have been more than fine with it, more so than I am right now. I don't think that it went there though. And because of that, it just kind of felt like we are just going to play the hits of Elvis and we're going to play them like we're going to turn it up to 150 and we're just going to play it loud. And if it had really, I think, gone for more of the darkness in Elvis's later years, it would have kind of felt more like this is actually the tone that you're supposed to be playing this piece at. I just didn't feel like it actually it didn't evolve with the story. And the story is good. I think the story is very good. I do think they need a better editor in there. But even on, I could even see this being in the top kind of portion of the movies that come out this year because it does do a very good job of what I don't think a lot of movies are really able to do, and that is create just a moment, recreate a world, create a person. And the best you could say of Bohemian Rhapsody at times did this, but it didn't really do it that much. And it's that you feel like you are watching history unfold the moment that it was unfolding and being in a very important part of history. Documentaries get to it every now and then, but I think whenever movies achieve that of recreating something that actually happened and getting as close to authentic as possible while still kind of keeping its distance from it, it feels so much like you're soaring or like you're a fly on the wall, like an actual fly on the wall experience. And there's particularly in this movie, there's a protest song that Elvis sings. It's, I think, one of the better moments in the movie. And if you go and watch, like I did, you go and you watch some of these segments again, they did such a good job, not just in recreating it step for step, because that does not always work at all. There's no guarantee that just because you hit all of the physical costume, hairstyle, lighting, beats exactly like they were back in the day, that you're going to actually create something that feels real, like you're actually rebuilding the world. But this does achieve that. I think it is primarily because of the acting. That's why I think Austin Butler is the reason that if this works, it works when it does. But then all of the stylish stuff is still there for those moments where it really, really achieves something great. And there are a few of them. And I think there are enough that it is worth going to see this in the theater. It would be a shame if you did not catch it in the theater. It'd be a shame if you ended up catching it on TV afterwards. You just wouldn't feel the best that the movie has to offer. And I think there's more lows. There's more, really? Are we really sitting through all of, do we need all of this? Like, and then you're there and you're like, this is too much. Like, I feel like for the last 5 minutes, I haven't needed to be seeing any of this. Even with all of that, I still think it's very much worth seeing in the theater. I think if you are willing to go and check it out in the theater. I've gotten a higher level of respect for Elvis than I had before I saw this movie. And yeah, for that, I think it's worth going to check out. So if you've seen it, let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to 5 Minute Critic for future updates on reviews and movie news.